Assistant Professor Urmi Shah from IT/ICT Department of LG Institute of Engineering and Technology. As we all know, right now we are discussing chapter number 4 of Analog and Digital Communication subject, that is angle modulation. Basically, in angle modulation technique, we have started with the FM modulation, PM modulation, what are its comparison compared to the amplitude modulation technique that we have seen up till now. Now, how to generate FM wave, what are the processes involved in FM modulation or angle modulation, that we are going to see from this session. So as we all know that there are three parameters of any signal which we are varying at a time. Single individual parameter is varied, and based on that variation we are having that specific modulation technique. For example, in amplitude modulation we are varying amplitude, in frequency modulation we are varying frequency, and in phase modulation we are varying phase. But now we have three parameters for any signal, that is amplitude, frequency and phase. So now let's look upon what are the processes involved in FM generation, how different methods are used to generate FM modulation signal, and how those modulators are producing modulated signal, and once it is captured as a receiver end, how those signals are retrieved back as original signal using FM demodulator circuit, that we will see now. So now let's start with this session. In today's session we are going to discuss following topics, that is preemphasis and de-emphasis of FM signal. Now first of all, you all might be wondering what the words preemphasis and de-emphasis mean. So we will be looking upon those processes. Then what is FM transmitter circuit? For preemphasis and de-emphasis, that we will learn, and at the end we are going to compare these two processes which are performed at the starting of FM modulation and at the end of FM modulation, that is preemphasis and de-emphasis. So let's start with the following topics. So these are the topics which we are going to cover in this session. So let's start with the first topic. So first topic tells us about what is preemphasis and de-emphasis. So basically pre and de-emphasis both are used in frequency modulation. These are some specific circuits which are specially designed for frequency modulation. Basically, preemphasis is used at the starting point of FM modulation, that is at the transmitter end, and de-emphasis is used at the ending point of FM modulation, that is the receiver end it is used. So before applying it from transmitter to the modulator circuit, we have a preemphasis circuit, and at the end after receiver we have a de-emphasis circuit. So this is preemphasis and de-emphasis. Basically, preemphasis in FM signal is done because the noise has a greater effect on higher modulating frequency. So to overcome on those noise signal, we are performing preemphasis of FM signal. So now let's understand what this preemphasis is and why it is used. So this is done by increasing the deviation. Now what is deviation? We have discussed in the previous session that basically we are varying the frequency of the signal. So the maximum allowable change in those frequency variation is known as deviation. So we have a parameter, that is deviation, that we represent by the term delta. So basically, preemphasis is done by increasing the deviation angle, that is delta, and this delta can be increased by increasing the amplitude of modulating signal at higher frequency. Whenever we are transmitting our signal from higher frequency end for long distances, at that time we use this FM modulation technique, in which we use the preemphasis process, in which we are increasing the amplitude of modulating signal such that we can have maximum deviation, such that the signal can be transmitted from transmitter end to receiver end without any interference or without any distortion or introducing noise into it. So this is the reason why we are using preemphasis. Basically, the definition of preemphasis says that the artificial boosting of higher audio modulating frequency in accordance with a prearranged response curve is known as preemphasis. So with respect to the modulating signal's amplitude variation, we are varying the deviation of FM modulating signal such that it can be transmitted from one end to another end without any introduction of noise into it at higher frequency level. So this process is known as preemphasis process. Now let's have a look on the circuitry of this preemphasis process. So as shown in the preemphasis process circuit, you can see we have audio frequency input. AF in is nothing but the audio frequency input. These audio frequency input is going to be applied to the transistor circuitry, and then we have the RC circuit, that is nothing but the filter circuit, which is going to pass the high frequency signals, and this way we can have a pre-emphasized output. So this is the circuitry for pre-emphasis. If you want to perform the pre-emphasis process, you require this much blocks such that you can achieve a pre-emphasized output with high frequency input, such that it will pass by the high pass filter and pass only those high frequencies which we were desiring to pass from transmitter end to receiver end. So this process is known as preemphasis. Now next we will be looking upon is the FM transmitter circuit with preemphasis, where this preemphasis block we need to fit in our transmitter circuitry, that we will look upon. So seeing this figure, you can see firstly the modulating signal will be applied to preemphasis block. From preemphasis block, it will be applied to FM modulator block. In FM modulator, you will have the input from crystal oscillator. Basically, crystal oscillator provides the frequency ranges for signal based on the oscillations produced in the circuitry. So now this FM modulator will pass on the FM modulated signal for frequency up conversion. Frequency up conversion is required whenever we want to pass our signal at high frequency ranges. At high frequency ranges, you need to convert your given original or input signal at high frequency, such that the number of samples in terms of frequency can be raised. Then it will be passed on to the power amplifier. Power amplifier is going to carry this frequency up converted signal to the antenna circuit. Now this transmitting antenna is going to transmit our FM modulated signal towards the receiver end. So this way how the FM transmitter with pre-emphasis circuit works. This is the basic block diagram for pre-emphasis module included in FM transmitter block. So now moving ahead, let's understand how the de-emphasis will work. We have been familiar with pre-emphasis now. Now let's understand how the de-emphasis process works. So basically, de-emphasis is opposite of pre-emphasis. Before understanding any definition, the simplest form of understanding de-emphasis is it is exactly reverse of pre-emphasis. Pre-emphasis was at transmitter end, de-emphasis is at receiver end. So de-emphasis circuit is basically kept at FM receiver side. The artificial boosting of higher modulating frequencies in the process of pre-emphasis is nullified at the receiver end by using these de-emphasis process. At the starting edge of transmitter, we had done frequency up conversion. We had performed pre-emphasis. So to nullify that effect, we require the de-emphasis circuit. So this way the de-emphasis circuit will be used, which will work exactly the work done by the pre-emphasis work, but it will work in the opposite direction compared to the pre-emphasis. So this is how the de-emphasis circuit works. This is the circuitry for de-emphasis process. Basically, in de-emphasis process, we will have the FM modulated input, that is FM input. That FM modulated input will first pass through the FM demodulator input. FM demodulator will pass it through the low pass filter such that we had performed the frequency up conversion. Those high frequencies will be neglected and only the original message frequency, that is the low pass filter, is going to pass only the lower frequency ranges which were included in the message signal. So this is how we will achieve our audio frequency output back again, which we had converted for high frequency transmission. So this is how the de-emphasis circuitry works. It will work exactly in the opposite way of pre-emphasis. So this is the circuitry for de-emphasis. Circuitry is also exactly reverse. In pre-emphasis we were having the high pass filter. In de-emphasis we are having the low pass filter. So you can look upon here, it is exactly the reverse process or the alternate process of pre-emphasis. Now basically this is where the de-emphasis block falling in the FM transmitter part. Basically from FM input we will be having the input going into the FM demodulator circuit, that is nothing but the FM detector circuit. Then these detector is going to pass the further signal into de-emphasis block. In de-emphasis block we will have the following circuitry which we discussed. Now from these de-emphasis we will have our audio frequency input back, which was transmitted initially. So that we will pass on towards the power amplifier, and from the loudspeaker, that is the LS is the loudspeaker, we will achieve our original audio signal back. So this is nothing but the process of FM transmitter in which we have two processes, that is the pre-emphasis and de-emphasis. So now let's understand the comparison between the pre-emphasis and de-emphasis process. Basically, the pre-emphasis process uses the high pass filter. De-emphasis process uses the low pass filter. The circuit diagram of pre-emphasis and de-emphasis you can look upon here. The response curve is also the opposite. In response curve of pre-emphasis we will have rising of frequency, while in the de-emphasis response curve, we will have falling down of frequency. So this is how the response curve of preemphasis and de-emphasis. Basically, the time constant of preemphasis and de-emphasis are equal. Both are 50 microseconds. In preemphasis, we perform boosting of higher frequency. In de-emphasis, we perform removal of higher frequency. Pre-emphasis is done at transmitter side and de-emphasis is done at receiver side. This is how the both process, pre-emphasis and de-emphasis, works. These blocks are the major blocks of FM modulation scheme whenever you want to transmit your audio frequency signal at high frequency ranges. So pre-emphasis and de-emphasis process are very important process whenever we are learning any concept of FM modulation. So this is how the both process works. Again, we have a comparison between AM and FM, which we have discussed already. You can look here that basic differences we are performing amplitude modulation in AM and in FM we are performing frequency modulation. So this is how the both difference work. Now these topics I have referred from the reference books which you have studied here up till now, and if in case you have doubt, you can write doubts. Thank you so much for watching this session. In the upcoming session, we will be learning the FM generation circuit. What are the modes or what are the methods for generating the FM signal? For those generation techniques, we will be learning the FM generation methods. What are the different methods which is highly accurate, which is used in market, that we will be seeing in the upcoming session. Thank you so much for watching this session.